So we have three basic items on our agenda this afternoon, and I know we're looking forward actually to hearing all about them. It's nice to get caught up on what is happening, but also start moving us into a more normal kinds of conversation as well. So I would start off by asking Director Buffoni if he would lead the charge in giving us an update on how RCDSB at home is going. And I know you'll be calling on some of your exec team as well to help you out.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chair Humphreys. Do want to turn it over right away to two individuals on the team, Superintendent Block and Manager Fiebig will be joining as well this afternoon to provide a bit of an update on the IT related elements that we've been working on. And then I'll follow up once Superintendent Block has had a chance to speak to some of the key items in order to provide an update on a few additional items that are in progress beyond what was shared with the Board of Trustees at a briefing last Tuesday. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Block.
Okay, and I am just texting Doug to join. Hopefully he's getting that. But I'll start while we wait for him. Are you okay with me sharing my screen to show you some information in a second? Sound good?
That would be great.
Okay. So before I do that, maybe what we'll do is we'll just talk about the student device deployment. And what I mean by that is the process that we've been going through to get Chromebooks to students who needed them. That work started in the first week of the stay-at-home order, and we had teachers contacting students and families to find out who needed that support and recording that information. And then we were able to take that information and determine per school how many devices that would be. And we prepped approximately 1,600, or actually, we prepped approximately 1,800 devices for approximately 1,600 requests. So we did have a lot of requests. The first day of passing those devices was on Thursday. And so much of that work was done Thursday, although some schools are still not finished, and they'll be finishing that work this week. So we are trying to get devices out to students as quickly as we can. And hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have met that need for those who require it. Recognizing that, you know, as time goes on, we may have additional requests that we'll have to deal with, but the bulk of that work will be done. And so maybe I'll just pause for a second there if anybody has a question about that.
I have one comment. I noticed driving by a number of schools that they seem to be going quite smoothly, though I did get one phone call from a parent who lived on a farm and had no contact with the school, has 4 kids, elementary and secondary, and just wondered what was going on. And this was after a couple of weeks had gone by. And I'm sure that kind of thing happens, but by and large, I'm sure the system worked well.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what might have happened, obviously, in that case. I do know that I heard from principals that they were hearing from teachers that they had been trying to contact families and had not received contact back from some families, or were not able to contact. So I'm not sure if it's of just here or no answering machine, not get someone on the phone, or
yeah, this particular family they didn't have any internet. They just don't have it, and so they needed a phone call but didn't get one.
Yeah, and so I don't know.
It happens.
Unless, like I said, unless the teacher was trying to call and nobody was answering, or I'm not sure what might have happened.
Sure.
But if they get a hold of their teacher, if they contact you again, they get a hold of their teacher, their principal, and let us know, then we can work with that.
And that's the advice I gave.
Yeah, perfect. So Doug's having the same problem of having the wrong meeting link. I don't know if one of my friends in the background wants to email him the proper link. And I'll just let them know.
Steve, if you'd like, I can go on with the rest of the update, and when Doug hooks in, you can resume. Would that help?
I think I can go ahead and hopefully emailed him the link. He shouldn't be long. I told him to check. Okay. So as
Hi there.
getting, oh, there he is. So as far as students getting their devices, hopefully, like I said, by the end of this week, that process should be complete. Okay, now we're going to address the second part of that, of the issue here, which is no internet access for families. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll give that a second. So hopefully you're able to see my screen now.
How do I get it up? It's not showing.
You might have pinned somebody in your main screen, which is, there's like a little safety pin looking thing when you hover over people.
Not that I can see.
If you go up to the upper right-hand corner,
Okay.
and try and maybe click on me. Do you see me up there? Or
I see you, yeah.
what happens if you click on me?
On who?
On me,
Oh,
like
on you?
click on the picture. Yeah.
No.
Excuse me. You've got somebody pinned onto your main screen, so you're kind of
Oh,
whoever's
okay.
in there is stuck.
Steve, he has to click on, there's one, a pin with your picture, and then another one that says presenting.
There you go. Did you hear that,
I'm sorry,
Brian?
what was that?
So it should say Steve Block, and then under Steve Block, it should say Steve Block presenting or
Yes.
presentation. Click Steve Block presentation. It should work.
He was maybe looking at the wrong.
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing.
No.
No, but does nothing comes up.
Terry's here.
I got my tech support here. Hi.
It's got something to do
Pinned
with
to the screen. That's pinned to the screen, Terry.
Yeah, you've got somebody pinned to the screen. You have to unpin
That's
them.
unpin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're unpinned. So what do you want now, Dad?
Okay. It's unpinned.
Who do you want pinned?
I don't want anybody pinned.
Yeah, well, no one's pinned right now.
I'm not pinned, or you're not pinned.
The reason why it's showing Stephen blocked as is because it claims he's presenting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once
Tell you
he's
what,
done
I'll just
presenting.
listen and
Okay.
Who's talking?
yes.
Well, then you want to actually pin him. But you can already see him anyway, Dad.
Yeah, I know that. It's just
I-
not coming through.
I'm sharing my screen, so
I
hopefully
think
he's
we'll just move. We'll just move on. It's okay.
okay.
Well, he's trying to share the screen.
I know, but it's not coming through.
allowing it.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Hopefully the rest of you can share my screen. So what we did when the teachers contacted families, aside from asking whether they needed a device for their child or son and daughter, we also tried to determine who had internet access and who did not have internet access, and who also had potentially unreliable internet access. And so we gathered that information and we were able to kind of pull that out by school. And so what you're seeing on the screen now at the top here is the secondary schools. And you'll see, for example, ADHS, we had 14 students indicating that they had no internet access. Okay, so for a potential across the high schools of 86 students with no internet access, but a potential of up to 222 that maybe have unreliable, or in some cases, it was unknown whether they had it or not, as reported by the teacher. And we have that same data for elementary. So for 181 saying no internet access. So we had a discussion about that, and what we've decided to do, you'll see on this tab, is we have a breakdown of the high school students by grade. And what we're doing, because Doug's going to talk to you in a minute about how we intend to potentially provide internet access to families. As you'll hear, these devices, they're a hot commodity right now and not very easy to get. And so we're doing our best to obtain as many as we can. But what we're going to do is start by prioritizing grade 12 students. You'll see we have 33 here. And the reason for that is because they are working towards graduation, for credit towards graduation, and also for university and college entrance. They'll be our priority. Our second priority will be the remaining secondary students, because they are all being evaluated and working towards credit. And then once we've been able to meet the needs of the secondary students, we'll move down to the elementary students. Because as we know, according to the ministry direction, elementary students are receiving feedback on their assessments, but they're not being evaluated on the report cards on the work that they're doing from the start of the shutdown period to the end of the shutdown period. So that's kind of the order that we're going to go in terms of meeting those needs. And I'm going to stop presenting. And I'll take questions, and then I'll let Doug explain a bit more about how do we do this, what are the devices, how do they work, and what do they cost, and all of those details. Any questions just based on that first part? Okay, Doug, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, thanks, Steve.
Oh, Mike, I see you talking, but I can't hear you. I think Mike had a question.
Okay.
You're muted, Mike.
It's nice to see the statistics in black and white, just laid out like that.
Yeah, and of course we know, again, you know, some of that may change as we continue to get in contact with other families who maybe we weren't able to get in contact for whatever reason the first time.
Yeah, it's just nice to see that the priority being grade 12s and working your way down. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right, Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure,
I
sounds
believe
good.
Nick has a question. Nick has a question as well.
I'm just wondering about the grade 11 students too, because a lot of their marks, especially second semester, get looked at by OUAC when they're applying to universities. So I'm almost wondering if grade 12 should be priority number 1, grade 11's priority number 2, grade 9 and 10, and even grade 8's in that priority number 3, like split it down, because those marks, like I know grade 11 students, I'm sure Sam and Hudson can speak to this, but I'm sure there's grade 11 students freaking out right now because they're worried about their marks just as much as everyone else is, but they're more crucial.
That will be the order we go in. And then Doug's presentation here, we'll have enough devices, we think, to be able to do that.
Okay.
I believe Marjorie has a question as well.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marjorie.
She may be on mute as well. You type in chat, Marjorie, if you're down. Do you want to let Doug go ahead, and then if
Yes,
he's
let's.
able to get on, we can.
It looks like Marjorie has left the meeting again, so I suspect she's having trouble with her internet. So let's go ahead with Doug, and hopefully she'll come back on.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody's staying safe. Nice to see everyone again. Like Steve mentioned, you know, any device that allows people to get on the internet nowadays is a very hot commodity and very hard to come by. Through an OASBO call last week, I was able to get a bead or a source, some devices. So got hold of Bell and through some hoops and jumped through a few people, but finally got a hold of Bell World here in Pembroke. That's who they ended up putting his contact with. And last Thursday, I was able to source 300 Bell MiFi mobile hotspots. So very hard to come by, so I was glad to get through the doors. I'll feel better when I actually see them in my hands, but the order has been placed. So what those are, they're mobile hotspots. They come with a charger that allows you to even connect inside a car if you were moving or you had to stop somewhere in a parking lot. But basically, it's a device that they plug in, just powered at home, and allows them internet access. As long as they have decent cell service, would be the priority. So we got to make sure that the students are getting those devices have cell service in their area. The outright purchase cost of the devices are $199 per device. That's no contract, so we're not locked in for any amount of time. So if we only require them for 2-3 months, we can end at that point. The monthly cost is a minimum of $14 per month per device, up to a maximum of $50 per month per device, and that would be unlimited data at that point. There was a $40 activation fee that Bell agreed to waive on our for us, so that saved us a bit of money. But overall, we're looking at a total cost of approximately $100,000 for 300 devices that would allow kids access to the internet. We're working to get some of those devices in our hands this week. At the latest, they would have the rest of the 300 devices on April 21st, so a week from today. It does take some time for the company to get things ready. They have to unbox these things. They have to activate them at the office here in Pembroke, and they expect that'll take 2 to 3 days to get those ready as well. So I'm hoping if everything goes as planned, by the end of next week, we would have all those devices in our hands and be in the process of distributing to the students in the board.
So just as Doug was mentioning, the key here with these devices is that you have to be able to have cell service at your location. So if you live in a location where there is no cell service, then these devices will not work. And so for those folks who are in that situation, we're going to have to find other ways to provide them with work. So any questions about that?
Steve, I just wonder, do we know how many people or how many students might not have cell service? Do we have a sense of that yet?
So that's some of the work that the principals are going to have to undertake for us again in the coming week, because we do not have that data in the information that we have right now. So they're going to have to start looking at who are those students who indicated that they have no internet at home on their spreadsheets, because each principal has a spreadsheet specific to their school with names on it and so forth. And they'll have to start to get in touch with those folks to find that out, and then we'll have to shortlist from there.
Yeah, definitely people who live in the 17 corridor and the main populated areas and either don't have internet because they just don't have it or they can't afford it would be a good target audience to hit.
So Bell likely has a pretty good idea of where the cell service is not available as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that would be
They have
pretty
coverage
good.
maps. Yeah, they have coverage maps, but I think it comes down to trying to get that information as quickly as possible. So with the support of the principals and the teachers, that's probably our quickest way of doing that in terms of cross-referencing where people live and stuff. Because even sometimes those maps, right, they're not perfect or exact. They kind of lay their coverage area over the map, but I would imagine some fluctuation in there.
Yeah, the fact that we have target names to hit will be very helpful and easier to reach out that group. So.
I'll just see if Marjorie's been able to join us. I know she had a question before and has kind of been forced to be in and out a bit. Marjorie, are you with us?
I see she put a question in the chat. She wanted to know the total number of elementary elementary sets needing equipment. I'm not sure if she means needing a device or needing internet access. We had 181 elementary students saying they need internet. I don't know if you know, Doug, about the breakdown between elementary and secondary in terms of device needs.
No.
Off the top of your head?
I have a lot of numbers beside me, but it would take some time to pull everything together.
Okay.
I have it broken down by school. I'd have to compile that for sure.
Well, maybe we can get clarification from Marjorie, maybe even by email afterwards to see what she's truly looking for, because we don't want you to go to any extra work until we know for sure what she's looking for. If there are any other questions, perhaps you could put them up on the chat.
Not seeing any.
No. Looks like you've answered lots of good questions. I'm sure the next question, but probably not for you, is what do we do with the students who don't have access to internet or cell service? And then, but I'm sure Director Buffoni probably will be updating us on that piece. So thanks for all the hard work on that. I can't imagine the amount of time that the IT team has spent and just trying to get a handle on all this. So thank you so much for all that you've done, Doug, and Steve, of course, as well, and the rest of your team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed, Chair Humphreys. Thanks to Superintendent Block and Manager Fiebig for your incredible leadership in coordinating all of that work. I did want to share, and I saw it came in through the chat. We will share with the Board of Trustees the spreadsheet, just an item of sensitivity for trustees. There are some schools where the numbers are fairly low and could actually identify a student. So we'll just ask you to keep that information to yourselves, but we know it will give you an overview site by site of those numbers, but just be sensitive, especially where the numbers are very low, that it could be indicative of an individual. I'll just share a couple of brief items in a continuation of the update, and we'll share with the Board of Trustees that every 2-week period we'll look to highlight a different element of our pandemic management plan. So as you well can imagine, this week it was our IT department and all the great work that they've done. So we'll try to give a little bit more detail in one department or another as we move on over the next number of weeks with every 2-week board meeting, so that you'll get a better sense of some of the detail and can ask questions more specific to one element or another. There's only 3 or 4 other minor parts to the update. Of course, most of it was covered last week over 3 sections, phase 1 being pre-March 23rd, the second phase being our current period until May 3rd, and our indications from the ministry and the provincial government more and more is to continue planning in for a phase 3 post May 3rd. So we'll look to do that. But within this context of April 6th to May 3rd, a couple of other pieces for your information. And one of them came up, as you mentioned, Chair Humphreys, around our plan of action for those students who not only may not have a device, which we've tried to deploy to the best of our ability, and then tried to help access the technology through the pieces that Manager Fiebig mentioned. The third part for us will be an important role, which is the preparation or assembly of learning packets in print format. And so for those students who don't have the ability to access technology in one form or another, the central team through the program department and our system principals and instructional coaches are working their way through a plan by division: kindergarten, primary, junior, intermediate, and then secondary. And at the secondary level, it'll be by course, of course, because those students are older and more able to manage the independent learning environment. We're looking to prepare learning packets in 2-week modules, which would start next Monday. So that would be sort of week 3, but essentially the next 2-week phase, so to speak. So we're in preparation right now. And we're looking to create a series of generic essentially a choice menu for students so that depending on the grade, they can adapt the programming at home based on what the students are capable of, and then utilize our facilities department in the delivery and pickup every 2 weeks of these learning packets. We are working right now through a process of designating some type of an office staff at a designated location or 2 or 3 that could look at taking care of the printing as a coordinated service that we'll do in-house, and then distribution again through our facilities folk to those students throughout the district that may not have that ability to connect in an online format. We're working with the principals at tomorrow's meeting of senior administration through a series of questions to clarify this. It speaks a lot, Vice Chair Morris, to your question around those parents or guardians or students we haven't been able to reach, and really drill down to try and get to them to the greatest extent possible with the provision of this learning packet. The one piece I do want to highlight within this is that those learning packets will be generic for all students across the district, and then we will rely on teaching staff and our educational assistants and other important members of the team to connect with those students by phone, to be able to adapt or adjust, to add or supplement based on what's going on in the regular online learning environment that the rest of the class is involved in. So it is a bit of a hybrid. It's our best attempt to manage something for those students who are not online in one capacity or another. And I'm happy to field some questions on that. I'll just finish with the other 2 quick updates and then open it up to questions. The clarification of roles and responsibilities of all staff is continuing to expand. So beyond only the teacher's role, the role of the principal, vice principal, early childhood educator, educational assistant. So uploaded to the portal is an ever expanding array of roles and responsibilities. We're going to adapt that with less education speak to place on the student and parent guardian side. I think it's important as an organization to demonstrate the utilization of all of our staff, especially in a predominantly fully funded sector, how staff are being utilized. So we're building that over time, both to help staff, but also to demonstrate to the public the utilization of positions beyond the traditional ones, which would be the classroom teacher. And as a last point that I wanted to share in today's update, an additional entry to sites is being coordinated through our corporate services. That began as a second go through on Wednesday, April 8th for staff, but also one for principals and vice principals for an opportunity to retrieve other essential items for students that may have been missed. Again, some of the examples: eyeglasses, knee braces, essential learning material for students on a case-by-case basis that we know may be necessary, especially if we're looking at a longer period of closure, that the principals and vice principals were asking to get a sense of through their teachers and through their school communities, so that we can coordinate the re-entry to get those one-off pieces essentially. Really important point of clarification just before I turn it over for any questions you might have. It's important that this is not understood, the learning packs in print, as open for all students. We're relying on the vast majority of our students to access the online portal. We could not possibly manage a mass printing of every learning item that's required. So we really are, with our principals and vice principals, asking them to reinforce in their school communities that the print versions are for those students unable to access the technology. Other than that, we need to rely on students to access the technology as outlined in our upload of the portal. So did want to share those other pieces as an update. And again, every 2 weeks, we'll highlight a different element for trustees so that you get a sense of the operational elements we're trying to put into place. So open it up to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Pino. Any questions that we have from the trustees, either on the chat or if you verbally are available to do that, that's okay too.
Yeah, I have one question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Tomorrow, Brian and I are going to be attending our virtual SEAC committee meeting. And some of the people in that around that table, the virtual table, may ask us some questions. So probably more directed to maybe Pino and Jacqueline. But if there's anything that Brian and I need to know or read prior to that meeting, if you could send us that. If not, Jacqueline might have a handle on what she's going to be saying during that meeting. So I just thought I would throw that out there for particularly Jacqueline and Pino when it comes to special education students. We may have some questions that Brian and I may or may not be able to answer around a virtual meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So just talk.
Thanks, Mike, for that. Appreciate the question. I think it's valid. I'll turn it over to Jacqueline in a moment's time. I just will add, just before I start, part of the planning that we're doing is, of course, for our students with special needs and how we continue to differentiate the learning for those students. That's very important. And I will share, just before I turn over to Jacqueline, the update that I've just provided you. It's a little lengthier because I've only given you the more current ones. Most of it was covered last Tuesday, but that's been attached to the Google invite for this meeting, so that if you ever want a reference of in essence, is in general what we've done to date. I will continue every 2 weeks to provide an update in writing. I'll do it verbally during the meeting, but I'll provide it in writing for you so that if you ever had to reference, well, what's going on, it's there for you.
Okay, thank you.
I can just add the agenda for tomorrow for SEAC is simply a discussion around the continuity of learning plan. So Mike, it's going to be the agenda item, and you'll get an update from the entire department on what they've been doing to help support CERTs, educational assistants, teachers, how we've been putting plans in place for students who are in a small class placement or a modified or alt program, and what we're considering in terms of a non-digital response as well.
Yeah, I figured that's the direction you were going, and I just wanted clarification. Thanks, Jacqueline.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have one question. Now I know there were guidelines, sent out to teachers about the volume of work or the workload that would be expected at different grade levels, whether it be primary, junior, or intermediate. In a case where a student might have a number of teachers, has there been coordination among the teachers as to the volume of work? Because I certainly see a case where that does not really seem to have been happening. And I would imagine that there are cases across the county. I think that's a pretty important thing. We don't want to have students overburdened. We don't want to have families stressed because kids are not in a classroom and they're facing a large volume of work. So has that been an issue that's been addressed? Or
in short, Vice Chair Morris, I think yes and yes, with a couple of asterisks by it. One, it definitely is an issue. The managing of pace appears to be a challenge for us right now. I keep reminding myself we are less than 1 week into this, truly. We have just a short while ago finished day 5 of an entirely online environment. And so I think already people are adjusting, both staff, but also students. This part of the coordination on site is one of the key elements of what we'll be talking through with our principals and vice principals tomorrow, to try and tap into their staff to be able to gauge the amount of work that the client, the student, is receiving. That's going to be a key role of our administrators. It's been a little bit bumpy in our district and across the province. My message to staff to wrap up last week spoke a little bit about pace, but it's tricky because in some cases it's going a little too fast and a little too much. In other cases, as you mentioned, Vice Chair Morris, not at all. So it's a tricky balance on how to manage that. We're going to rely on our school leaders to help us sort through that. because it is a little bit bumpy right now, it's a valid point raised.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions out there? Okay, I don't think I see any, either on the chat or in real live person. Thank you, Director Buffoni, for that update. I know that we all will be looking forward to getting updates every 2 weeks. I think the question that Trustee Gannett put forward with regards to special needs is certainly one that we may get some calls about as well. So we'll look forward to hearing more about that. And it's a good reminder to us that, yes, we're still pretty new in this remote learning. This is only week 2, really only the very beginning. So I think there's still lots of learning to go on for everyone to figure out how this best works. But we certainly haven't seen a lot of unhappy people on social media, so that's always good to see. So it looks like the parents and the students are managing fairly well. So thank you for that update. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or are you okay for now?
All good from my end. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know that you're always available for updates and information in between. So if there's some questions that the trustees weren't able to get forward today, I'm sure that you would be happy to follow up with them as well. I know I'm particularly concerned about Trustee Adam. I know she's been on and off a fair bit. So hopefully if she has something she can.
Now.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Many a slip and a fall. Thank you.
I know you've been in and out, so that's unfortunate, but certainly you can follow up if need be. So thank you for that update. And I think we'll move on then to our second agenda item. And yes, it's hard to believe we'll be looking to the 2021 budget. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Barnes.
Thank you, Chair Humphreys. And it's great to see all your faces. And I do apologize that you're just seeing a picture of me because of the my internet availability here. I have to keep my camera off, otherwise everybody lags and I get dropped out of meetings. So you just get, maybe I'll change up my picture every so often, and so you can see me in different places. I know it is hard to believe. 2021 budget is upcoming. It's the budget season. Here we are in March. We were hopeful that we were going to have the GSN updates for April 15th, but we have since heard from the ministry that that's going to be a little bit later. They did reassure us that we received last year's GSNs on April 26th and everything turned out okay. So I guess we will just go with that. Fortunately, this year we did receive a B Memo 04 in early March, and that was really great for the budget planning because it confirmed that for secondary, we could work with the average class size of 23, which was pretty much where we were last year at 22.98, sort of moving towards the dial of 28. So that was really, really helpful to help with the staffing process, which is the salaries is the bulk of that budget. So with that, I'm going to let Tammy talk through what our normal practice is of preparing for the budget and some timelines and dates and what you can expect to receive from us over April, May, and June. So I think Tammy's in here somewhere.
I am. Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry. I also have my video off for the same reason. So in March, as normal, we've collected the projected enrollments from the schools. And they are the actual enrollments that they have entered into Aspen. So as we know, not all of our JKs are in there. So we do, when we're projecting our enrollment for grant purposes, we do project an increase in that because we know people register over the summer or early September. So we've done that part, the calculation for that enrollment, and we are currently showing that our enrollment is projecting to be slightly higher than last year, and I'm under 50 increase, so very close to last year's budget. So that's good news. We don't see a dramatic fall there. We've worked with HR to help determine staffing levels for the teachers so that we can start our budgeting process based on those numbers. So in April, we've continued to determine staffing levels for other groups, and we will be working on that so that we can calculate the budgets for those as well. We will be working on benefit budgets while we wait for the grant announcements. So we're still working towards a projection. And hopefully by the next meeting, we have received the GSN announcements that we'll be able to share at least a high overview of those, of what we know. Then in May, we will calculate the GSNs based on the information we get and any other miscellaneous revenues. And we will continue to refine our budget and update department budgets and utilities, transportation, et cetera, for the next year's budget. So that so by the middle of May, we should at least have the GSNs calculated in the revenues which would be in line with last year's budget. And then by the end of May, hopefully we'll have a preliminary budget projection with expenses and revenues so that by June we can do any revisions and present a draft budget that could be approved at the end of June, because so far we're hearing that we would still be approving everything at the end of June. So that would be it.
So the one thing that will be the same as last year is our budget process. That's what we have to offer you. Not sure if anybody has any questions, but we would welcome any questions now.
Does anybody have any questions? I have one, just while other people are thinking of theirs. I heard earlier Doug Fiebig talked about an extra $100,000 that we would be investing in hotspots for our students. Do we have any indication from the ministry yet that they're going to be covering off these extra costs, or is this something we need to find?
The ministry has given an indication that they're not covering off costs related to staff. However, we are not operating as usual, so we are not spending money on mileage and meeting costs, travel, and that sort of thing. So it'll be more of an adjustment within our dollars, within our current budget. So more of a shuffle. We'll be spending money differently.
Okay, so the ministry is not covering it off as an extra. We will just find it. As you say, we're spending less money in other areas. I believe Trustee Shields has a question as well.
Yeah, mine's about transportation. Are the bus operators and bus drivers being paid any amount of money?
That's a great question, Dave. And it is a hot topic, and we're right in the middle of everything. So I'm really happy that you asked that question so I can bring you up to date. There was a lot of discussions around the province amongst the consortia and the different school boards. Nobody's contract had language around a pandemic. The closest thing most contract language referred to was inclement weather or snow days. There was very little consistency on how operators were paid for snow days. Some days it's a base rate, sometimes it's a variable, sometimes it's a percentage, maybe 75, 85, 80, all over the place. There was some direction, but not direct direction from the ministry. And then the ministry said, here's the broad-based direction, which was follow your contract language, unless you can come to an agreement locally. So that really cleared things up. We looked to what others were doing, the group through COSBO, and what we've put in place is we had, through COSBO, there was a legal law office that drew up addendums that for all school boards to use. So rather than each school board go to their own lawyers, it was Keil Cottrell, I believe, drafted up the addendum for all school or the consortias to use. So we put in an offer, we gave the offer to the operators on last Friday, which is to pay 85% of base rate plus variable. So the ministry is fully flowing through the school boards to the transportation consortias, but they are not, they've also given a strict sort of warning that a lot of boards are in deficits when it comes to transportation, and that I wasn't completely convinced we would be funded into our deficit because the ministry is recognizing that the operators are not running and not incurring all of their costs. So by paying the 85%, it does recognize the value that the school bus operators bring to our districts, both the Catholic board and the public board, but it also does allow us a 15% savings that we would then use to offset our deficit because we're not up and running. The operators will let us know by this Friday if they are in agreement. Also in the addendum is the requirement that they pay their school bus drivers. If we're going to pay them 85% of the base and the variable rate, they need to pay their drivers. So that's what they are mulling over this week. Because we only paid the snow day rate for the second half of March, there would be a reconciliation payment that we've committed to. If the addendums are received this Friday, we would commit to having that to the operators by next Friday. So a good plan, following ministry direction, sticking to our contract language, trying to be consistent with the majority of the school boards in the province, and just waiting to hear back from the operators whether they are in agreement or not.
Excellent. Sounds like it's good timing for sure for us to know that information. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, I don't believe there are any on the chat either. I think we're good.
And actually, if I could, on
Absolutely.
that timing, just because I did write down budget, capital, transportation, if there are any wonderings about the approach with capital projects, the ministry has, we are not an essential service as outlined in the Emergency Act. The school sites are closed under the Education Act. The businesses that are allowed to operate are identified in the Emergency Act, and there was a legal opinion sought and sent out, and unless it's emergency repair or maintenance, there will be no construction projects going on or allowed through this closure period.
Okay, thanks for that clarification as well. Anybody have any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, both Superintendent Barnes and Tammy for bringing us up to date. And it is nice to have some consistency, and that we could be consistent with our process at least. So that will be good news for sure. And we'll look forward to getting more information from you in the next couple of weeks for sure. And with that, we'll go back to our agenda, and I believe our third agenda item is around retirement celebration, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent McIntyre, if you could give us an update.
Thank you, Chair Humphreys. So just a quick update with regards to retirement celebrations. So we're still kind of nimble on this one, but we're getting down to making a decision about whether we should postpone or not. If I were a betting person, I'd say we're probably postponed. And likely until a year from now, and we'll have one retirement celebration for two groups of retirees and their respective retirement classes, I guess. Interestingly enough, we are down quite a few retirees this year. We have, last count, around only 20 people retiring. And over the last few years, we've had anywhere between 45 and 50, 53. So we're down, a fair number. So maybe that's a bit of a blessing for us, that we can have a smaller class join the retirees in 2021 and pay them proper respects with that group. So we've also, though, went ahead this year and ordered the retirement gifts for our retirees. We didn't, the local artist who does that work, I think, quite counts on that work. So, and we had budget to set aside to do that. So we were going ahead to have that part done, just so that person isn't out of that kind of source of income. And we'll hold on to those gifts until next spring, if that's how it plays out. So that's kind of it in an update. We haven't officially declared that to the system yet, but that's kind of our thinking at this point in time.
Thank you, Superintendent McIntyre. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Trustee Adam.
Thank you. Brent, that number of retirees, is the official date for retirement already passed, or may we get more?
Well, no, I mean, I guess officially people only have to give 2 weeks. So the retirements could continue to come in over the course of the spring. It may be that people are just holding off until they see what transpires in terms of schools proceeding or not. If school gets canceled at the end of the year and then we're not certain about the fall, people may decide not to. It's really hard to predict, but certainly to answer your question, there's nothing that says a person has to retire, unless you're a superintendent, anybody out there listening. Now, there's nothing in the collective agreement that says a person has to declare their retirement at any particular time.
That was what I thought. Thank you for clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Superintendent McIntyre? Sounds like a reasonably good approach, I think. We want to make sure that we have the ability to honor those retirees for certain, and perhaps it would be better to have the 2 cohorts next year rather than trying to do one in the fall. And I'm sure you've looked at both those options. So
yeah, the fall, we looked at the fall. It's a fair amount of work, and we're anticipating a transition from using an outside person to handling it internally. So it would be a lot of work for my team to do it twice a year. This is the first time. If the cohort remains small, it may be an opportunity to have, a bit of a bigger session the following year. And I think you're right. The main thing is that we're respectful and we honor the folks who've worked for us, and to figure out a way to do that to go forward.
absolutely. And I was glad to hear that you've gone ahead and ordered the gifts as well, because we certainly want to continue with that process. And,
Yeah.
and you're right. I'm sure that the artist would appreciate having that spread out over the 2 years rather than having it in the 1 year.
Yeah, I think we've all heard stories on the news that our artists and musicians and things are being particularly affected by this pandemic. So we're trying to be as thoughtful and as community minded as we can.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? I'm just checking chat to see if there's anything out there. I don't see anything at the moment. So thank you for that update. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, on to our agenda then. I'm not aware of any correspondence. I haven't received any correspondence, and I don't believe we've had any in the last couple of days. And so with that, we'll go forward then with the Committee of the Whole report. We did have a closed session Committee of the Whole report earlier today, and I would ask Vice Chair Brian Morris to present that report, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Committee of the Whole of the Renfrew County District School Board met today, April 14th, 2020, and discussed the following item in closed session. Proposed collective bargaining agreement between CUPE 1321 and the RCDSB. The following recommendation was made. Proposed collective bargaining agreement between CUPE 1321 and the district, that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees ratify the memorandum of settlement regarding the 2019-2022 collective agreement between the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 1321, and the Renfrew County District School Board. I move that the board adopts this report.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Morris. Do we have a seconder to the motion on the table? It looks like Trustee Boland. Oh, actually, Trustee Edge popped in first. So thank you, Trustee Edge. Do we have anyone who is not in support of this motion? And if so, would you please put your note on chat? Give you a couple of seconds to do that. Seeing none, I'm assuming that everyone is in favor of supporting and adopting this report. So it has been accepted, and that recommendation has been accepted and passed. So thank you very much for that. Next on our agenda is the director's report, and we'll turn it over to Director Buffoni. I'm not sure how much he wants to cover, but I'm sure you've read the report in our agenda item, and he may have some other things he wants to include as well.
Thanks, Chair Humphreys. Just a very quick note towards the end of the update. A note of thanks and of admiration to staff and students who are really making our current environment work, both in terms of the incredible videos sent out to staff, especially during to students, especially during our closure period, just to say that they were missed in the school environment, and also to the staff and students and school communities, including our parent guardians who are taking on additional responsibilities right now in the home environment with respect to education, for all of their efforts to work it through, including the previous discussion around the pace that I am confident we will work out over time. And my gratitude to all of the Board of Trustees and senior staff for your flexibility and patience, as well as your leadership in seeing us through this new environment for the time being. So no additional points to add beyond what's already been covered.
Thank you very much. I know that we've certainly appreciated the update, the brief update we had last week, Pino, and having it again in writing is also good so that we can refresh our memories, as we do sometimes get calls from parents and community just wondering what's going on and how things are going. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Director Buffoni?
Just more of a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Gannett.
I know that some people in the community have suddenly been unemployed, and besides the education with kids, I think that particularly with couples where both of them are unemployed, there's a lot of they're very stressed at this time. I mean, I know a couple of people in the community that aren't used to reaching out for whether it be food banks or whatever. And there's pockets of a lot of poverty in our community. So I think that when our administration, teachers, and all educators, I think that they're pretty cognizant of that, but it's just, it's a territory that we haven't forged in the past. So some people are still just sort of getting over the shock, and I think they're just about to start, obtaining some government assistance, but I think that they're reeling from this. So that's more of a comment than anything else. Thank you.
I really think, Trustee Gannett, you raise a valid point. A couple of points that we hope to bring forward in a future update. We're trying to work with our Food for Learning folks, and I know they're closed right now. John was able to follow up around school nutrition supports for students who are receiving that in the school setting and now at home. That situation is likely not gone away and maybe worse. And also some of our community partners, such as the Kiwanis Club, who are offering to provide computers through Chromebooks for students who may be in need beyond what we lend out. So we're definitely keeping our channels open with our community partners to make sure that we try to meet the needs to the best of our ability. But you're absolutely right. It's a significant shift for many of our families as we go through this unprecedented time. It's at the forefront of our thinking, and it's something that no doubt we'll be talking again with our administrators of schools tomorrow at our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Director Buffoni, and I'll go on to the chair's report. And when I was writing this, I was thinking, I don't know what I've done the last couple of weeks, but I thought it was a good opportunity to certainly express our comments on behalf of the board. Certainly, our world has changed a lot since our last board meeting, and in a very few short weeks, all of our lives have changed. And Renfrew County students, staff, parents, and communities have truly had to adjust to a different way of learning. Over the past 3 weeks, and really it's 4, I suppose, and almost into 5 now, we've seen examples of tremendous leadership, creativity, innovation, dedication, and compassion. With Director Buffoni and the entire senior leadership team, plans quickly came together to ensure that our students would continue on their learning journey. And perhaps for you folks, it didn't appear to come quickly, but for those of us looking in, it certainly did. Without our regular meetings and physical interactions, the trustees all turned to our social media platforms to gauge our community's concerns. It was interesting to watch how social media highlighted extraordinary connections between educators and students, and Director Buffoni, you mentioned that already. So many great things were happening even during the first few weeks of our school closures. This speaks volumes about the strong relationship that our educators have with their students. Other highlights included the appreciation for the hard work being done by our custodians in an effort to clean and sanitize our schools. And behind the scenes, other amazing work was going on. Buses were sanitized in preparation for future use. Our administrative support teams ensured that financial and HR processes continued as needed. Our IT staff provided the critical support and planning to ensure a successful launch of our portal, RCDSB at Home. An army of staff worked on preparing the material to assist teachers and students with their new way of learning and teaching. Our communications team provided information to all stakeholders in timely, multifaceted, and creative ways. And I know many of us have really noted the communications that we're seeing in our local papers and on our local radio stations as well. Our mental health team perhaps refers a bit to some of the issues that Trustee Gannett was identifying. They have developed additional ways to work with our community partners and provide support, and that will be an ongoing need for sure. And principals and vice principals provided great leadership to their school teams of educators and have been in the forefront answering concerns by both parents and students. Thank you so much for all that you have done and for all that you will continue to do to put our students first. We need to remind parents and the public that this is an interim measure to ensure our students continue working on their learning journey, but it does not equate to the great work that happens in our classrooms when students can be face-to-face with their teachers, their fellow students, and other support staff. We also know that our students have been doing some great learning at home with their families in many fun ways. And for many families, it's been an opportunity to spend more time together. And there's more to be done, of course. Last week and this week, we know that devices were put into the hands of students who needed them, and thank you so much to the IT folks for organizing that. It will continue to be a challenge to find ways of providing support to students who have no internet access, as well as finding the best ways of assisting our special needs students, and we've discussed that a bit already today. And of course, the well-being of students and staff will be an underlying theme during these uncertain times. As plans continue to evolve and solutions are developed, we know that all staff at the RCDSB has stepped up and are providing the very best we can for students. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to commend and sincerely thank Director Buffoni and his senior leadership team, along with all staff at RCDSB, for their excellent work during this unprecedented time. And thank you for putting our motto into action once again: inspire, empower, and achieve. So thank you for all that you've done, for sure. And with that, I don't believe the student trustees have a report unless there's something, Student Trustee Abbott or Student Trustee Arbor.
I'll just quickly, we don't have a report, but I will share a brief update just kind of with elections coming up. So really the only thing that we have to report on today is that elections are coming up next Thursday and will be held online in a similar manner to the meeting being held today on Google Hangout. We'll be using Google Forms to vote as well. I'm not sure how many applications we have right now. I've heard that there's 3 who are applying. I don't know if we've received all of them yet, but I'm happy to hear that we do have multiple people applying. So we're looking forward to that, even despite our current circumstance. And before long, we'll have a new student trustee, so we're excited about that. One other thing that I'll note is that we had a great student senate meeting on March 12th, and we were glad to have the director there in attendance, and we had some great discussion concerning rethinking the secondary level. Beyond that, we don't really have much else to say. Thank you to Brian, Dave, Hannah, John, Shelley, and Pino for helping us out throughout the day for Student Senate. But other than that, I think that's everything. If Hudson has anything to add, beyond that, I don't think I have anything else.
Yeah, I don't have a lot, just that I guess we're continuing to push to have people apply and to make sure that senators are still checking in with their students and getting back to us on how people are doing in this time. And yeah, other than that, we're just focusing on the election. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks for the update on from both of you. And we look forward to seeing how the new way of voting for a new student trustee goes next week. I guess it's next week, eh? So we'll look forward to that. So thank you for all you've done. That's for sure. Look forward to hearing about that. Are there any questions or comments for student trustee Abbott or Arbor? I'll just watch the chat for a minute and see if there's anything coming up. Okay,
I don't have any. Could I just make a comment?
Of course.
Not about not addressed to our student trustees in particular, but I just want to attach on to the comment that Trustee Gannett made about unemployment and that. And when schools and teachers are putting together packages for students to work on in the weeks to come, they have to keep in mind that it's not going to be received the same in all homes. Not all homes are going to be set up, especially in this time of chaos, really, and great stress, to be able to assist these students. So the appropriate workload, that's going back to my original comments, needs to be set, needs to be coordination among all the teachers, and then recognition that in some homes, parents are going to be very willing and able to assist their children, work through these online work. In others, they're just trying to get on with surviving, and the students are going to have great difficulty in dealing with the work that's being presented to them. So it's a very uneven landscape at the best of times, even more so right now. That's it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Morris. So you bring some good points forward, and you're right. We have to be careful and be alert and aware of those students who are most vulnerable. We know that probably 90% will be just fine during all of this, but it's the other 10 that we have to be very vigilant and careful about. Okay, with that, I wondered, Trustee Shields, did you want to give a quick update about OPSPA and what's happening in that world?
Sure. I was on an executive meeting conference call and Adobe Connect meeting today. And there's really 3 things that came from that. We are recommending the ratification of 2 of the different EDFO contracts. So that will be passed on to the board of directors, and our director is Chair Humphreys, so she'll be voting on those contracts tomorrow. Secondly, we have postponed the May OPSPA Board of Directors meeting, and thirdly, the AGM in June, the one that was supposed to be in Ottawa. So those are officially canceled now, or postponed, sorry.
Thank you, Trustee Shields. Not surprising about any of those things, I don't think, but we do need to keep moving forward, that's for sure. So thank you for that. And yes, there will be a conference call tomorrow at noon to give us an update or an overview of EDFO's agreement. And then the following week, we will be voting on supporting that or not. So thank you for that. I'm looking for new business. Does anybody have any new business out there that that we need to be aware of? I don't have anything on my agenda. Anybody have any information items? Okay, I don't think I have anything either to add. So with that, I'm just going to say a quick thank you and then looking for a motion to adjourn. So I'll give you a heads up on that. But I do want to thank everybody for their patience today. It takes us a little bit of time to get on to how this actually works. It is a new process for the trustees, and I know that both Vice Chair Morris and I would appreciate any any suggestions you might have to make sure that our future meetings are as efficient as possible. It just takes us a bit of time to rethink how we want to manage some of those things. So at this point, I see that Trustee Shields has made a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a seconder? Sure I do, out there somewhere. Just waiting. Oh, Vice Chair Morris has seconded it. And I'm assuming that all are in favor of that. So with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll be in touch soon. Bye for now.